Far out. Yes, it looks like...
You can swear, it's okay, I'll edit it out.
Yeah,
Go
okay.
crazy.
Well,
You should hear Eisenbach. I had to edit out all her swearing. She has a filthy, filthy mouth. That was what made the editing so hard that time. Horrible.
all right, welcome to number Quackcast 65. This is the second part of our superhero thing of gods and superheroes, men and women in tights, preferably thigh-high tights for the women. Superheroes. And of course, my continuing guest on this is my Dr. Watson, my Robin, my Baines.
Kim Cattrall to your Sarah Jessica Parker. I don't know why I would pull that reference out, but I have no idea. But hello, thank
Sex in the City. That's exactly it. I've been to New York once, so yeah.
And I've been there never, but I watch, a lot of shows that are filmed there, so I get it.
You're in the same time zone.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Close enough.
And I'm drinking a Cosmo right now. I don't even know what that is, but whatever.
Kramer?
Exactly. I'm the George to your Jerry.
No way. George is the better character. Jerry.
Yeah, you see what I did there? Yeah.
Bastard.
Sidekicks are interesting. Sidekicks can be... I don't know if sidekicks are generally more interesting. Probably not, but...
They probably are,
Because they're flawed.
Yeah. And they're
They're
fun.
free to have the flaws. Yeah.
Because
Jimmy Olsen to your Superman.
exactly, yeah. And
Hey,
he's
Mr. Kent.
a sidekick.
Are we going to do the Quackcast now, Mr. Kent?
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Wow, see, I can't go that... Yeah, you are a better Superman. You have, like, a deeper voice.
Jimmy
like
was
a
more a sidekick in the early Superman TV show with was it someone Reeves? It's not Christopher Reeves. It was the other George Reeves. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. That was a great show. Did you ever see those?
I didn't have a chance to see it. You can probably watch it online, though. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I would like to see that.
That was cool. Black and white. He was a great superhero.
All right. Blah, blah, blah. We got features to do.
Okay, now for the features. First up, we have Dr. Death versus Zombie. Okay, this is School Monkey's feature. Take it away, School Monkey.
Hello, School Monkey here to tell you about my feature for this week, which is Dr. Death versus the Zombie. This comic is rated M, and it's published by Champion City Comics, who is made up of, well, I don't know entirely who it's made up of, but this comic in particular, the writer is named Tony Doug Wright, who I think also owns that Champion City Comics account. The artist is A. Cavaraj, and the character apparently is by Aaron Schutz. I'm not sure about that character's history, but presumably he's given people permission to use it. Okay. Oh, the Champion City Comics account does have several other worthy-looking comics listed in the profile. It looks like, again, this is an account used to host a small collection of independent comics. So if you like this comic, then there's another Dr. Death story, which I think is the prequel to this one. There's a superhero comic, a cop one, and a war one, and I don't know, maybe more will show up. And I do want to note that Dr. Death vs. the Zombie has been pre-uploaded in batches, so the uploaded date looks a little wonky, like some time ago because of a current bug in the system, but it has been about a week since the most recent page went live, and hopefully there's more to come. Anyway, this is sort of marketed as a horror comic, and I'd say there's a mix of other things in there as well. There's some fun occult stuff, a little comedy, and perhaps a bit of intrigue, but it's not really a mystery comic. The main character is Dr. Death, who reminds me a little bit of John Constantine. He can sense the pleasure or pain of those around him. I'm not quite sure to what extent that means, but it does mean apparently that he can tell when people have cancer or whatnot, which must be useful for his hospital job. That doesn't seem to make his life much easier, though. He seems to get mixed up a lot in a lot of assorted things. He's not quite an anomaly either. He seems to have a batch of similarly talented associates, people called the League. And in this comic you see a man named Freaker who can pick up various radio signals and who ruthlessly capitalizes on that. This is set in Las Vegas, not the glitzy, family-friendly one, but the seedy one with fretted wallpaper and nasty pawn shop owners. The story is that this pawn shop owner is brutally murdered, all because he got ever so slightly mixed up in some stolen voodoo objects, including a voodoo zombie. Hence the title. The zombie is wanted by an organization of vampires who are not a nice bunch of people. However, there's some confusion going on about who actually has the necessary objects and how things will all shake out. Dr. Death, of course, is going to get heavily mixed up in this as well. He and the vampires don't get along. He pretty much wants to wipe them out. This comic features marvelously detailed black and white artwork. It looks very professional. As appropriate for a horror comic, there's lots of heavy black and deep shadows. There's full backgrounds, rendered textures, very detailed faces, and so on. There's a great balance of light and dark on every page, and although the artist uses so much black, nothing gets lost or muddled. There's some violence, it's mostly implied. The black and white takes away some of that ick factor on the few things that the comic does show. It doesn't look like there's anything digital here, actually, art-wise, other than the scanning. You can even see how the panel borders are a little bit unfinished and that the letters are done by hand and everything. Because everything is so heavily detailed, sometimes things look a little bit stiff. Everything is rendered very realistically, could possibly even be photo referenced here and there, but most of the pages so far involve people talking, so no really exciting shots or action, things like that. Maybe too much dialogue at times. Definitely too much exposition with the vampires. I'll come back to that. It's still very cinematic, though, and there's a lot of black and white movie influences there. So I think it's okay if a comic feels a little static sometimes. It depends on sort of the type of comic it is and what look you're going for. Writing-wise, there's some really enjoyable dialogue, but I feel like too much is going on within exposition. There's not much of a mystery going on, and I don't know if they've missed a trick there or not. So the hook of the comic, for me, was more in the art than the writing. We're pretty much told what has happened, and it's kind of up to the reader's curiosity whether they want to see how, the doctor figures things out, or, if there's some surprises in store. So, yeah, I'm not sure if, we really needed to know the whole vampire side of things. I'm wondering if some of that was because the writer wanted to fit the story inside of a page limit or something. I'm not sure that really applies to webcomics anymore. But it is an entertaining read, and fans of supernatural things and pulpy horror should quite enjoy it. So, that is Dr. Death versus the Zombie.
Okay, that was School Monkey's feature, Dr. Death versus the Zombie. Very stark black and white artwork to that one. Very professional looking. Looks really, really fantastic. Jealous. Okay, my comic this week was Medieval Mayhem by Nova Dragon. In this comic, Crown Prince Nathaniel and his favourite squire Erin have a lot of good times back at the castle, as young people are wont to do. Erin's older sister Val is a cheeky witch who has a lot of surprises up her voluminous sleeves, and Nathaniel's younger brother Michael is always trying to kill him. Siblings can be such a pain. In this case, Michael is wants to be a bit of a usurper, so he's always scheming to take over the throne. And he's pretty bad at it, so that's where the humour is. Okay, Medieval Mayhem is a full-colour humour comic strip with neat, slick artwork, slightly chibi characters, and it really is quite funny. It's a solidly E-rated humour comic, and yet it still manages to be truly entertaining, even with sticking within an E guidelines. I never thought that possible, but it does it very well. I advise you to check this one out as soon as possible for an enjoyable light read. It's only 34 pages or so, a bit more now, so you could very easily get through this one and just read along with it regularly, which these kind of comics you're really meant to do, because it's just a fun, good, light read. Medieval Mayhem is written by Nova Dragon and her brother Retcloak. Obviously not the real names. It's sketched by a girl called Moon, and then coloured and inked by Nova Dragon. So, yes, this is a very nice, pretty comic with beautiful little chibi characters. The backgrounds are fairly sparse. They used to be a bit more detailed, with at least bricks and things, but now it's sort of gradients. But that's sort of par for the course with comic strip style comics. It's minimal, simplistic, and just enough to get the humour across, which is character based, and it does that very nicely. Not much of a story to this one, just young people in a castle. So far it's focusing on mainly the younger characters. I think Crown Prince Nathaniel's mum is in it occasionally, and also Nathaniel's got a dragon as a present who can turn into a human. So that's a new little bit of a storyline there. It's like the confusion. Comedic stuff based on, I don't know, anime, manga sort of ideas. It's that sort of thing. Little dragon pet becomes a human, comes alive, falls in love with her owner. But it's quite a funny comic. Good, enjoyable. I liked it. I hope you do too. So there we are. That's the features for this week.
Those are good features. But in the meantime, we have other stuff to do. It's the continuing saga of the soap, Drunkduck soap. What happened while I was away? Let's listen.
And now, the continuing story. What happened while I was away?
You know me, I like to make jokes about hats.
Meanwhile, at Duckham City General Hospital, in a brightly lit, stark white operating theater, product placement works madly over the prostrate body of Croats. His white doctor coat is splashed liberally with bright red blood and various other bodily fluids, none of them from Croats. Nurse Roculili fusses in the background, putting on a convincing act of love and ebullient efficiency. A phone rings. Roku picks up the receiver.
Hello.
This Rogalili?
Yep.
Mama Bear has left the cave.
I see. Don't worry. I'll fix this.
Frowning with determination, she hangs up and turns toward Dr. Product Placement, quickly composing her features into a look of worried concern.
Doctor, I need to leave for a bit.
Okay.
Don't go overboard.
Jeez, women. Yeah. I wonder if sonic burps are too much. No.
From behind a convenient bush, Roculili spies sneakily on the DD gang.
Whoa, check out all these hats.
Hats go vast.
Hats! Ah, hats.
Roku smiles in gleeful satisfaction.
No one can resist the lure of hats.
Meanwhile, Yasen Bag stands alone, looking about her perplexedly, with a worried frown.
Where is everyone?
Where is everybody?
Meanwhile,
Yar, criminal mastermind of bad spelling, call me Tom, strolled down the near empty streets of Duckham City. Whilst adjusting his bowler hat to a jaunty angle, he pulled the mistress blinky device he had taken from Iron Scarf's not very secret hideout.
what the bloody hell is a battle goat?
He loudly monologued.
And more importantly, where is everyone?
In the middle of the desert ozone ocean, put down the 500 million billion page giant mecha manual.
I have less idea what I'm doing now than when I began.
He raged. P.S. Rocky Lily, that comic is fantastic. Yeah.
72 shook his head in disgust as he waved the pages under Rocky Lily and Call Me Tom's noses. He took the last of the seaweed out of his hair and flicked it at Playmire. Playmire had rescued 72 from the trunk at the bottom of the Marianas Trench. He had been trapped there by Iron Scarf. Playmire was a submariner, and he had been searching for 72 because he held the secret to the dreaded Battle Goat.
It's simple. When no one adds anything to the story for a bit, the last plot complication just fades away by itself.
Serene said, stepping out from behind the welcome at Muckham City Hospital. Rocky Lily looked at the sign and then at Call Me Tom.
Change the sign back.
She turned to the beautiful Greek patriot.
How do you know this?
Tanserine struck a heroic pose, throwing the empty bottle of ouzo over her shoulder to 72's waiting arms. He turned it over in disgust, realizing it was empty. Playmire reached into his blistering barnacle sea bag and pulled out a few bottles and handed them to 72 and Towns. Towns gestured to wait as she opened the bottle and took a long swig.
Bravo told me.
She gasped, wiping her mouth with her long linen sleeve.
Where's Bravo?
In an alternate universe where Pitface is the tool of evil overlord and Tabby-Cat's wear plate armor.
No, that's just the 6th floor.
Rocky Lily, Tance, and Call Me Tom all turned around to see a very tall Icelander in scrubs.
I'm Dr. Product Placement. Duckham General Hospital, like a lot of older buildings, has gates to alternate dimensions. Once she mentioned the tabby cat, I knew she was referring to the former janitor of the 6th floor, Harkavest. He was sucked into an alternate dimension, along with the rest of the 6th floor, a couple of months ago.
On the 6th floor, Bravo sighed in contentment. He closed his communicator, an apple eye all. Now things were finally beginning to fall together.
Of course, since no one else is writing anything, this could become all Bravo all the time. And the Master will not allow that to happen.
The knight who was put to arc said in a monotone.
Right! Now we have the Master!
Bravo mused as he adjusted his scarf. It was only half the length of Tom Baker's scarf, but had been lovingly knitted by Bravo's grandmother. Harkavast's mouth dropped open as a very large man walked up and pounded him on the head.
I may not be green, but I can be quite an ogre when I want.
The large man said in an English accent.
I'm Jean Joke, but you probably already knew that.
And this is a rescue.
Jean Joke nodded at Bravo's question.
I was just throwing my voice into the donkey to flip you out.
Well, that's a load off my mind.
Bravo replied, adjusting his scarf yet again.
From her posh penthouse apartment, Eisenbach stared at the large pile of hats with her telescope.
Such lovely hats.
She purred, shifting her view to look at Raku-Lily getting caught in 72's plan to rescue Bravo.
Oh, it looks like they've been left unguarded.
Clapping her hands, she summoned her ever-faithful savant, the unnecessarily loud Ninja Baines.
Come now. We have some hats to steal.
Some other people had better start posting on this thing. Bravo seems to get pissed when I do.
Only for comic effect.
Now that everything is about hats, it's time for me to swing into action,
said Oz as he adjusted an absurdly high pile of hats on his head. Oz is normally a person of average height, but his pile of hats made him taller than Dennis Rodman.
Just don't make the same mistake that poor guy in the Batman outfit made about swinging.
School Monkey said as she adjusted the Eye Viewmaster to look once more at the Pocket Universe on the 6th floor.
Dun, dun, dun.
And that was this week's episode, What Happened While I Was Away. Wonderful job by all. Now let's go back to the Quackcast in progress and see what these two guys are talking about. Probably still old black and white radio, I'm guessing.
So
I did see the movie based on that. This is a total sidetrack. Forget about that. Let's just keep going.
Sidetracks are fine.
We have a whole other hour for me to go on sidetracks and stuff.
Exactly.
Anyway, I was just going to say I saw the movie sort of based on the strange circumstances surrounding George Reeves' death. Ben Affleck played George Reeves, the original actor who played Superman, and anyway, it was a pretty interesting movie. But anyway,
he thought the folklore is that he thought he was Superman in the end, and then jumped off a building because he thought he was flying or something.
Oh, I've never heard that.
Didn't they do that in the movie?
No, but I think he died strangely. Like there was sort of strange circumstances surrounding his death.
Mysterious.
If I had known we were going to talk about that, I would have looked into it. But
bugger.
Next time on Quackcast 66, Ozone and School Monkey will talk about strange deaths and unexplained Hollywood stories.
And how it relates to webcomics.
Good luck with that. Yeah, relate that to webcomics somehow, yeah.
But this does segue nicely into our next topic, which is Golden Age superheroes or Silver Age. I have no swearing idea what those are. So,
the Golden Age, would that be the 30s, like the end of the 30s with Batman up to the 60s, say, or something?
Is it?
I don't know. I'm asking. You just said you don't know, but I'm asking anyway.
Let's assume it is. All right. So the early superheroes, I think they all fit into Golden Age or Super Age. They're Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the Hulk, Thor, Spider-Man, the Phantom, who's my favorite. I love the Phantom. Doctor Strange. The only thing I know about Doctor Strange is that he's a magician and he was also in a T-Rex song. And he was in a few 1960s, 1970s rock songs. People loved Doctor Strange for some reason back in the old days. I don't know why. Captain America with the shield. Everybody loves him. Fantastic Four, Iron Man. So what do you know about any of those superheroes?
Well, I used to read Marvel comics when I was a youngster.
Yeah.
So and I love them. There was a whole mythology about the Marvel Universe, and they did a comic series about that mythology. So going all the way back to the early '60s, where Marvel. Well, I mean, I think they started as another company earlier than that, and they had all those World War II superheroes like Captain America and what's his name with the eye patch, Nick Fury, and I think Sergeant Rock and stuff. They had all that stuff during World War II. But then in the 60s, Marvel Comics came out with Fantastic Four and, Hulk, Spider-Man, and the X-Men, and Iron Man, and Thor, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, there was a whole mythology to how the universe began and how Galactus was the first. That's this sort of huge, giant creature who's the first being in the universe. And I knew all of that stuff when I was a kid. I don't remember much of it now, unfortunately, but...
Wow, so Galactus is sort of like that reminds me of the original the god stories. So in the Scandinavian myth, the original kind of character in the universe is some kind of ice giant, and the brother gods slay him. Odin's one of them, and then the gods sort of create the world on him. And it's the same in the Greek myths. You've got Kronos, who is the original Titan god who they kill and then create the world sort of around him. But anyway, he is like the prototype kind of original kind of character, Kronos, and then the later gods. So yeah, I love the parallel there. That's beautiful. But I suppose they would have done that. Sorry, what were you saying?
Go ahead.
I suppose they would have done that, connecting all those gods in a, I don't know, the mythology of the superhero universe, because all these things started out as individual published kind of works. There wasn't any connection. And then Marvel came into existence and brought these things up, and then they had to connect them because their readers read the same kind of things, I suppose.
I mean, really sort of an endlessly fascinating mythology to a kid. I mean, to connect all of these characters, which I think they did that quite early on. the Fantastic Four versus the Hulk, or what have you, whatever the first crossover was, I don't know. But then, they brought Captain America back from the 40s. He was frozen in ice, and they brought him back. And
Wonder Woman as well?
Well, that's a different company, but that's DC. The DC universe. Okay, now we're going to this is the geek cast. But, yeah, that's DC Comics. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, that's a different company. But that's why Superman doesn't fight the Hulk every couple of months, I guess.
Because they're the two main publishing companies, which is DC is just DC, isn't it? And
DC, yeah.
Marvel. So they own this bunch of superheroes, and this comic company owns that bunch of superheroes, and they just became the two main comic publishing things. These two American comic publishing companies, and I think they even copyrighted at one stage the word superhero, so no one else could use it in any other context. It was their word. So they're
that right?
Apple. Comic
Really?
Sue everybody.
I thought you were serious.
They did. They copyrighted superhero. It's true.
Oh, you are serious? Okay.
Yeah,
I thought you were
did.
baiting me.
Yeah. It's ridiculous, but they did it.
But they didn't get away with it, did they?
I think they did.
Really?
Well, the courts in America are very silly, so they let people do crazy things like that. So if you're doing a comic, you can't use the word superhero unless you're Marvel and DC, because I don't know. It's like the birthday song is actually copyright. It's insane.
That I do know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that sort of makes a little more sense than copyrighting a word, even sort of an unusual word like superhero.
I know.
It's
weird. But the thing is,
maybe that's the reason why they use the word para, like paranormal or para-human or whatever. They in some comics they use those different, and which is really cool. Like those words sound much cooler than the word superhero.
Exactly.
So maybe is that why they
overused?
Do that?
Yeah, that's true. But what I was going to ask is, these heroes came about in the Golden Age, the Silver Age. A lot of them evolved from, as you were saying, war comics. So you've got someone like Captain America, who is like a normal soldier, and he's been turned into a Superman, and
a classic
Batman.
Origin story, right? He's a weakling in the 30s or 40s, and he's a small, little, weak, sickly guy, and he volunteers for some super soldier program, and they turn him into the ultimate sort of warrior.
Yeah, they use their magical powers of science.
Yes.
But the thing is, these early superheroes, what sort of connects these guys all together in the Golden and Silver Age? They're simple, aren't they? They're just after bad guys. It's a simple black and white world, isn't it? Pretty much.
I think so. I mean, when I first started reading comics, my favorite was the Hulk. Well, I guess first it was Batman, but then I liked the Hulk, and he was a little unusual, because he didn't really have the intelligence to go and fight villainy. He had enemies, and he was, to my memory, it was sort of just by happenstance that the people he fought were more evil than he was. He's destroying buildings and jumping around and causing all kinds of chaos and destruction, but luckily there's a monster there that's even worse. So the Hulk was pitted against the Abomination or whatever.
So Hulk, in a way, is based on the more elemental kind of superheroes. So he's like a force of nature more than anything.
Right, but he is. I think you're supposed to consider him a good. You consider him a hero, right? He's not a villain.
Yeah,
he is a hero.
So
but...
I was thinking, like I said before, in the Quackcast number 64, I think it was.
Yeah, I remember that. That was fun.
All those years ago. So he's more like the original Thor. So he's stupid, and he just fights anybody who comes against him, really.
Yeah, and then he reverts to the Doctor,
Bruce
who's
Banner.
a regular human being, Bruce Banner, who is intelligent and I guess tries to guide him. Hulk also early on had a sidekick.
Really?
A regular kid. Yeah, Rick Jones. He was this teenager who was on site and who was kind of responsible for the accident that turned the Doctor into the Hulk.
With the gamma rays.
You're right. Well, initially it was the gamma bomb. So this Bruce Banner is sort of testing this new gamma bomb, and before the test can go off, he looks out onto the field, and there's this teenager that was like sitting in the field where the bomb was going to go off. So Dr. Banner goes rushing out into the field, and there's some kind of double agent who doesn't turn off the bomb test, you know. So Dr. Banner manages to get this kid Rick Jones into the trench, but then the bomb goes off many miles away. But you know, the Dr. Banner is bathed in this gamma radiation. It sounds so crazy, right?
Instead of giving him instant cancer or organ failure or whatever happens,
that's right.
He gets the Hulk powers when he's angry. It activates his something, hypothalamus, I don't know. Turns him into a monster.
It activates his... Yeah, exactly.
I only know... The only things I ever saw about the Hulk was these early comic animations. I can't remember what they were. And, of course, the TV show with Lou Ferrigno, you know, the big muscle
Bill
man.
Bixby and Lou Ferrigno, yeah.
Yeah, Bill Bixby. Yeah, that's right. That was great, that show. But it was always very sad because it had this sad kind of music behind it.
And that was sort of the... I mean, I don't know what these terms mean either, but the Silver Age, maybe the Silver Age Hulk, where Bruce Banner is this wandering man. He just sort of wanders the earth looking for a cure, I guess. And he gets into these problems along the way and, you know, turns into the Hulk. And saves the farm from the developers or something.
The show was more in the style of what's that show with the kung fu? Is that what it was?
Absolutely, it was the same show pretty much. Yeah, it was,
except with green makeup and muscles.
Well, yeah, I'm talking like sort of under the surface. You know, it was this traveling guy who helped people.
Exactly. The fugitive, all that kind of stuff. The wandering superhero. I suppose that would be based on some old Japanese stories that they have of wandering Ronin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
There's something great about that, man. I love that show, The Hulk, too, and I loved Kung Fu, about the traveling hero, you know.
Yeah, who's willing to support the underdog, and of course we have the later shows like the A-Team that did the same kind of model in MacGyver and.
That's funny. I thought of when I said the Hulk and Kung Fu are the same show. I thought of the A-Team also. Like, well, that was the same show again, you know, kind of.
So now we know what
The Littlest Hobo. How about the Littlest Hobo? That's my favorite superhero.
All right,
again, same show with a dog.
Here. So the next topic is supervillain. So what was the supervillain in The Littlest Hobo? Was that a bigger German Shepherd or what?
Well, it was the same as Kung Fu or the Hulk. It was the developer, you know?
Or the
or the people who wanted to, the industrialist who wanted to take over the cattle ranch or something like that.
So
to sort of take it out from the poor farmer or something.
So the supervillain is always the capitalist? Are you saying superheroes are communist? My God!
I really blame it all on the Littlest Hobo, that they were perpetuating that stereotype. I just noticed it.
Supervillains. Who is the... So the idea is a superhero. Does a superhero need a supervillain? Abbott Nihil reckons that, supervillains are just something you can slot in every now and again as like the antagonist of the week kind of character. But does the concept of the superhero need a supervillain in order to be a superhero? Does that make sense? Or
I mean, it's hard to say. Does it need to have a villain?
I
would say probably kind of, yeah.
we have these heroes who are so super powerful that normal bank robbers and that kind of stuff just don't cut it anymore. You see that in the early Supermans or whatever. They and well, at least the early Superman animations that I've seen and the early Batman animations, they have the bank robber as the villain, or the normal criminal, and the superhero protects you against them. But that's not really enough of an antagonist to challenge a superhero. So then you need a villain who is of similar power in order to be, worthy of an antagonist. So,
or he can equal this, even if he doesn't have the same power, he can equal the superhero in his own way.
Exactly, because you've got a character like Superman, who is meant to be the most powerful person in the whole of the world. So what was the point of having any crime at all?
It's true.
You have to have something that... Well, that's why we invented that Achilles heel.
That's right. That's why they needed kryptonite. Again, good point. Yeah, needed the Achilles heel.
It gives your villain something to start with. My favorite ever supervillain from the Superman universe, at least from the cartoons, was Bizarro Superman. I love him.
Right.
He was the opposite, with his big square head and talks funny and it's like a mutant.
Was he sort of like a zombie, like a monster zombie, or?
I don't know. He's just got a big square head and he's talks funny and he's just Bizarro. Me Bizarro. Me hate Superman.
That's right. It was me Bizarro.
I love him.
Yeah, that's cool. That's an unusual choice for a favorite villain. I like that. That's great.
He should be everybody's favorite.
Or they should be a Bizarro everybody,
There should be.
Oh no, it's Bizarro. It's Bizarro Ant-Man. And there's a sort of Bizarro version of it. I guess that would get boring after a while, probably.
Me Ant-Man, me Bizarro Ant-Man, me. They have to refer to themselves in the third person. That's the main qualification.
Yeah.
So
that does create sort of an alien kind of feeling and a strangeness, right?
It does. So let's see.
He's not the greatest Superman villain, though.
Villain was Lex Luthor.
That's right. No powers.
With a bald head, he's amazingly rich. Again, the communist. I mean, that makes Superman a communist because Lex Luthor is like the
industrialist.
Yeah, industrialist. Yeah, so there we are. Yeah. The Joker is Superman's most popular villain, and he's
Batman's most popular villain. You mean, right? Yeah.
What's that?
You mean he's Batman's most popular villain?
Batman, yeah. You see, that's why I need a sidekick. Because I make these errors.
Hold on, Mr. Kent. According to my notes, the Joker battles Batman, not Superman.
That's it.
That hurts my throat to do that, but I'll do it.
Spider-Man, his main villain is the Green Goblin, according to me.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the Joker. I mean, is there a greater villain, a more sort of popular villain than the Joker these days? Probably not, right?
The Joker, yeah, who are exemplified by the amazingly Australian actor, Heath Ledger.
Yeah, you haven't seen that movie yet?
Have never seen it.
It's a pretty amazing performance, man. And he is a scary... I mean, he is like... He's fantastic in that movie. And that character is pretty phenomenal.
With the crazy... He provides some logical reason for the makeup, which is that he keeps on putting crappy makeup over his face and he's a nutcase or something. I have no idea.
I don't know how they do it in the comics, how they do it in the Dark Knight. And I'm sorry, webcomic quackers, to be all mainstream and stuff, because I don't really know the comics very well anymore. But in the movie, they do it really interestingly. They make it a complete mystery. He does tell a few stories about how he got his scars and how his face was disfigured, but it's always a different story that he tells throughout the movie. And was that ever the right way to go? So in the end, even we don't really know anything about him, except for he is a force of complete chaos.
That's a good idea.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Because that's in, I don't know, in the comics, I've never really read them, but the comics and the movies and the animations, there's all a million different origin stories for that villain, so I suppose that sort of ties them all together, and it doesn't tie them all together. It references.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it could be anything, or it could be none of those things, and to reveal everything sort of takes away some of the power.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. If you get rid of the mystery, you make it less interesting. Well, I first came to Batman in the 1960s TV show. I'm not that old, but it was the first one I saw. Was with
I read Detective Comics in 1939, and I said, get rid of the gun. He doesn't need a gun, and you got to give him a little boy with a little green Speedo on to run around with them. That's what I said.
Robin.
That's my old man voice.
Doing the
Adam West.
Adam West.
That's
it. Adam West as Batman. Holy smokes, Batman! Fantastic show. The first superhero with eyebrows on his mask. The first superhero to have a dance named after him, the Batusi.
Yes.
Who had the Batmobile, that beautiful long convertible vehicle.
Oh man, like that show has aged obviously now, and it's kind of silly, but that car is awesome.
Yeah,
there's no denying that.
And the Joker in that was this amazing camp guy who was played by
Cesar Romero.
Cesar Romero, yeah, with a great camp kind of way of acting. It reminded me a lot of Vincent Price. And Vincent Price is actually in the Batman as Eggman, I think, or Egg something or other.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Was it Mr. Freeze, or it was Eggman? Yeah, I think it was Eggman, yeah.
Yeah, something about eggs. But
I am the walrus! Oh, anyway, we're not going to do that. Sopa.
Cuckoo Cuckoo.
Yeah.
That was a really good incarnation of Batman. And then the next one was in the brilliant kind of kickstarting of the whole superhero movie, and because we had the superhero movies really I don't know, there was the Superman one in 1979 and a bit into the 80s, and it died off with the crappy sequels. Then 1989 I think it was, or 1988, we had the Batman movie, which was incredible. It was amazing with who played Batman in that movie?
It was Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton, excellent, yeah. Who did a brilliant performance as Batman. Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Another origin story for the Joker there, and that was sort of camp because that was directed by Richard Burton, wasn't it? No, not Richard Burton. Richard Burton, the Welsh actor. Yeah,
yeah. It was Tim Burton.
Tim Burton, that's it.
Yeah. It was directed by Burton Cummings, and it was this beautiful. Yeah, it had a beautiful score, and yeah.
We're talking about supervillains here, so
yeah.
The
Jack Nicholson as the Joker in that movie
was a great Joker. Now, what was his famous line? You got to know that one.
Wait till they get a load of me.
That was it. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
That was. But let's talk about what's our next topic. Moving on. Superheroes that don't quite work out as well. The second stringers. Now, my opinion of second stringers are the Flash. The Flash. Who cares about the Flash? I know the guy in The Big Bang Theory really loves the Flash.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Whatever his name is. Anyway, so he likes the Flash. I don't know the Flash. His ability is to run fast, and Superman can sort of is the fastest thing in the world. So that's sort of, and that's the Flash's only powers. You can see why the Flash is the second stringer.
I mean, Superman kind of trumps all the other superheroes because he can do everything they can do better than they can do it.
So what's
That's
the
just-
point of those other superheroes?
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's see, who else? Aquaman. He talks to fish. He lives in the ocean and he can talk to fish. Now we can see Aquaman's limitation there. What's Aquaman going to do when someone's being robbed? Call, I don't know, a goldfish?
Lady, if you can guide him towards that fountain over there, I'll get in it and I'll do some serious damage. But you have to get him in that water. Just see if you can. Yeah, that's what he would do, I think.
Get him near the fish tank. Get it to rain a lot? I don't know.
Have you ever read Kingdom Come? This comic called Kingdom Come?
I don't have a frickin' clue what that is.
Okay, it's a DC comic, and it's sort of set in the future. Superman is old, Batman is old, and these old heroes have kind of gone away, and this new crop of heroes have come up. And in the course of the story, the old heroes come back. That's all I'll reveal, other than to say it's fantastic. But there's a brief appearance by Aquaman in that book, and they sort of go to talk to him, and he says something like, I can't believe you're asking for my... Like, they sort of literally go under the ocean, and that's where Aquaman lives now. He's under the ocean. And he says, like, my kingdom, like the kingdom I protect, is 90% of the world. You know, and just in that one scene, Aquaman was more awesome, I thought, than I'd ever seen him before. That there's an entire society there's a whole sort of world down there that he's the Superman of that world, you know. And I don't know if they do that in the comics, but to me that was like, well, yeah, that should be what Aquaman is, right? You put him under the water, and there's a whole society down there, and that's what he handles. It's this alien sort of world.
Well, I used to watch the animation of Aquaman. See, I know most of these comic heroes from the cartoons, because I never read the comics. But in the Aquaman animation, yeah, it was always he lived in the ocean and he saved the people of Atlantis from various things and whatever happened in his undersea world. So I suppose that's where all his superhero stuff takes place, in the under the ocean. But I suppose that's why he never really catches on as much as the other guys, because he can't fit in with them, because everything there happens in the normal human world. So,
well, where I first heard of him was in Super Friends, the old cartoon Super Friends.
Super Friends,
which I know you know that,
Justice
right?
League. Yep.
And that they were sort of in the world, and they were, you know, it was a team, and it was always sort of Superman and Wonder Woman and Batman and Robin, and then various other people would come in and go out. And whenever Aquaman was there, it was always like, oh. Although when Aquaman was there, they would always, coincidentally, they would end up under the water somehow.
just for his special talent. And of course,
it's really lucky they went.
Yeah, all the rest of them have super duper powers that trump his anyway. So even under the water, he's not much of a hero.
Yeah, Superman could swim really well and hold his breath forever. So you have Daredevil here.
What do you know about Daredevil? I know there's a movie with Ben Affleck that everybody thinks is crap. That's as much as I know. And he's blind.
Right. Well, he's blind. He's an acrobat. He when he was blinded, I guess he, as a child, I think, is how the story goes. He lost his sight, and his other senses were supernaturally enhanced.
Okay.
I mean, it would kind of be cooler if they weren't. If that was training, that would be kind of cooler if they had done it that way. That he trained his other senses to be more powerful. But I think in the original comics, every other sense is superhumanly acute, and he has no sight, but he has a radar sense, so he basically can see. He knows if something's there and all this kind of stuff. But I always thought he was an all right character, and he sort of was based in this really crime-ridden sort of area. He was kind of like Batman, I guess.
Yeah.
Marvel Comics' answer to Batman, maybe, in a way.
All right, with DD as his symbol.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, that was the forerunner of webcomics, where DD is a very important acronym.
Exactly.
Anyway, forget about that.
And not just Wonder Woman's chest size.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah, exactly.
Now, Black
then you
Lightning.
have Black Lightning. Who's
Now,
Black Lightning?
he was one of those exploitation kind of characters like the Shaft, who's to appeal to I don't know, people who calling for a black character who needs someone to identify with because they haven't got anyone to identify with. So because all the other characters, like Superman being I don't know, some kind of Nazi almost, this white guy, they're all white, so you need to make it multicultural. Appeal to the spectrum of the culture. You've got to have all these different characters to appeal to what the society is made of, basically. So I don't know, Wonder Woman did that a bit, didn't she? But she became more main. She became one of the main characters. I think she originally started out as some kind of thing to appeal to bondage and all that, but she became the character for women, basically.
Or tried to. I don't know how effective she is at that.
Yeah. But
did any women on Drunk Duck write in about superheroes? Not that I noticed.
No, women don't care.
That's interesting to me, kind of. Like, that's we were talking about that last week. I don't know if you remember, but
no, it's too long.
We're going out live, by the way, people. Anyways, so I have often wondered, or at least often since you first said we were doing a Quackcast about superheroes.
A male thing.
Is that a male sort of escapist fiction or heroic fiction? Like, do they really appeal to women?
I'd say they do.
I would imagine Wonder Woman probably isn't hugely appealing to women.
I think she was originally because women didn't have a character really to point out
no
and
other
identify with, and there was that one. So even though she's dressed the way she was, just because she's a female character, they have someone to identify with. But I think even though we naturally would think that this is a more male thing, girls like it just as much. I know School Monkey loves Batman.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and lots of girls like characters. I mean, they all love dressing up as Harlequin.
I think maybe I'm just guessing because I don't really buy comics anymore. Like, I read all my comics literally on Drunk Duck. That's where I get my comic fix. But I don't really buy comics.
Person should.
Exactly. That's where everyone should be going for their comic. I'm assuming maybe it's better now. There are more female characters, better and more interesting female characters.
Yeah.
And of course, like you said, like a woman can like male characters too, and guys can like female characters or whatever, of course. But it's nice to have that diversity within the characters.
Within the
themselves.
So there were a few female versions of mainstream male superheroes to try and cash in on that. So we have Supergirl, we have the She-Hulk.
My favorite is the She-Hulk. Yeah.
Yeah, she's awesome.
I don't know who she's based on. Is she a female version of Superman?
I think so.
I don't really know. Or is she a totally original character? I'm not sure. But she's great, and they've done kind of interesting things with her in recent years. I know that, but
she's a lawyer or something, isn't she?
She's a lawyer, and for a while there. Oh, this is going back a little bit now, but she had a comics. Her second comic book series she was aware of the fact that she was in a comic book, and so it was done as a very comedic kind of, and it was a lot of fun. It was great.
And
anyway, She-Hulk. Yeah, I love She-Hulk.
But we should focus on the fact that why don't they work as well as superheroes, the mainstream, and why do they remain second stringers? So why is that? They're just not as cool as the first original guys. No one. The first guys got there first, and no one else can really butt in. There's only so much room. The originals have taken all the good powers. They've left over crap for the second stringers, and we have the Green Arrow and whatever. I just know the names of these characters and the images. I've never read the comics, so I've just got to guess. All right, you've written some interesting stuff here. So the anti-hero became more popular in the 1980s and the 1990s. Now, I did hear that, and I think that started with something with X-Men, probably, didn't it? Because that had
maybe.
Had a bit of more theme to it about Nazis and all this and killing people off because they were weird or different. And of course we had the famous English comics done by 2000 AD, which had Drunkduck. No, they had the famous thing, Judge Dredd. That was it, Judge Dredd.
Right.
The famous.
It was also
character.
the rise of Wolverine, the hugely popular Wolverine in the 80s, right?
Exactly.
The
And
anti-hero.
of course, the comic genius, which was Rob Liefeld. People love to hate, who was really behind a lot of gritty, nasty characters with their...
Well, there was also The Dark Knight Returns. Now, that was sort of a seminal, if
Batman.
that's a word, I don't know. It was sort of a very important book in 1990, or maybe a little earlier or something, by Frank Miller. And it was a Batman story, very dark, and it was kind of about the end of Batman's... Not the end of his life, but he was an old man, and he had kind of gone away, and through the course of the story he comes back, and it was it was huge, and it sort of deepened and darkened the character a lot. So
it gave them more humanity, more realism.
Definitely gave them more darkness and more grit.
Took them away from that moralistic super stuff. No, that's okay.
Right.
Still got call connection problems coming up on this bloody Skype thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember one theory there was that stated that superhero comics were the kid-friendly version of the pulps originally, so they started pretty tame in the old days, but as the audience aged, the genre grew with them to meet expectations, in the 1960s, all that kind of stuff. It got darker and more mature, and that's why it started well, at least that's the theory that's why it started to die, because the darker stuff couldn't appeal to younger fans as much as the old moralistic stuff did. And the Beeve, which is a great contributor here, he writes, his idea was, Marvel Civil War finale sold something like 260,000 copies, give or take 10 grand, and these aren't page hits, these are hard copies, so saying superheroes are dead or dying would be a little preemptive. The health of these comics are tied to Disney now, so they're not going anywhere. Maybe they're like spiritually dead to you, Ozone. Now that I can't contest. Regardless, the same thing has been said about video games, and these kids love their killer spiel. I know enough about superhero comics that the place to look for the start of this maturation process would be Jack Kirby. He injected a lot of the angst into the genre. It appealed to the teen audience, and he considered his characters as the new myths or the new gods. It also helped that all superhero comics and heroines were basically nude. The same look that the Greeks used to drape, stop and wear cloth over their models, just enough clothing for conservatives, keep the conservatives and the moral people from knocking. We should have a nude week on Drunkduck. And I agree with that.
Did you say you don't agree or you do agree?
I sort of agree. Now, I wrote a reply to him. I said, as for started to die, what I meant was, in a general sense, there was a massive explosion of superhero comics in the late 80s and 90s, this huge bubble when lots of characters came into being, all these side characters, all these really crappy characters that had their own comics, all Rob Liefeld characters. And they had their own successful lines, and you could possibly say that possibly coincided with old fans having lots of money so they can indulge their passion in comics, and because they appreciate the new people coming in because they appreciate the swing this comics had taken. I don't know, but that explosion contracted right down because most of the old side characters lost out, and comic industry had to retool to focus on the main characters and popular lines only. That was exemplified amplified in the Civil War thing, as I understand it, because that was mainly a gimmick to get people to buy comics again, and it also helped to slim down the comic universe because they were able to kill off a lot of these side characters. The new popularity of newer films is a newer thing, because after those Batman movies, no one was interested in comic book movies until Spider-Man and X-Men and Iron Man made it cool again.
Right.
So what does the Beats say in reply to that? You can read that out. Hey,
well, Civil War was a Mark Miller actually, storyline. You might recognize it as the story that killed off Captain America. That was in the news. And I'm not entirely sure, but it might have tangentially rebooted the Spider-Man series that had been ongoing since forever. All the fans lost their collective over that. It was pretty hilarious. But it serves the same purpose as a lot of these story arcs, like Planet Hulk, World War Hulk, All-Star Superman. They do their best to drum up the hype machine and push comics out the door, and then they're wrapped up and sold as trade paperbacks. Trades are what is slowly resurrecting the industry from the crash. On a side note, the crash of the 90s wasn't necessarily caused by the public's interest or disinterest in comics. It was because the distributors of comics created a bubble that had people opening comics shops and production companies spitting out comics hand over fist to meet the demand. When all was said and done, all the small retail stores went out of business, but with the advent of the internet, it seems like they would have lost their legs one way or the other. Anyways, paperbacks are what's setting the pace of these storylines, at least until web readers replace them. But hopefully will never happen. I like trades. They provide a good bit of story at a fair price. The materials they're printed on are quality. It's ideal. That's not to say they make good movies, though. The Green Lantern was based on the Secret Origins arc.
Yeah. This call quality is cutting out a bit for me, so I'm sort of having this weird jumbled up version of what you're saying.
Oh, yeah, me too. It keeps cutting out and then kind of coming back, and then I hope the recording will be all right. We'll have to see.
We'll do what we can. Abbott Nihil writes in his reply to that. He says, as for crossover comics like the Civil War, the Beav mentions in bringing in new readers, i.e. people who hadn't read superhero comics before, by creating a hype. That's definitely one reason, but I'd like to add two more. By bringing in characters from several comics series together, you might convince someone who's already reading, say, Spider-Man, to also start reading Iron Man. Back in my teens, when I had just started reading DC Comics, that worked pretty well for me. I'd been reading just Batman and a bit of Superman, but it was the crossovers that led me to branching out within the DC universe. Also, if you're already reading several separate titles, there's a demand for reading stories in which heroes meet. It's always interesting from a story point of view, beyond any marketing tactics. I'm not involved in Heroes Alliance for selling anything, but for the sheer fun of having characters interact and bringing creators together. That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, who didn't, back in the day, apparently, who didn't want to see, the Fantastic Four fighting the Hulk? And who would win in a fight, Superman or the Hulk?
Because of enormous pressure, Ozone Ocean and Baines reconvened to record some of the late posts on the subject of superheroes.
All right, so it's El Cid is up first. Do you want to read him, or should I?
I'll start if you want.
Okay, you be El Cid. I always picture El Cid as being, my name is El Cid.
Is there a specific voice I should use for this?
Could you do a Mexican bandito voice?
No.
Okay.
I've never even tried. I'll do a droopy dog voice.
I think the recent spate of superhero movies isn't so much a matter of superheroes suddenly becoming relevant, but just the fact that special effects are cheap enough and good enough now that they've become feasibly profitable. Superheroes give plenty of opportunity to dazzle the audience with eye candy, and and even come with prepackaged stories and pre-existing fan base. For a movie executive, it's irresistible. What makes a superhero iconic and enduring? That's a good question. It's true that superheroes from history, from Gilgamesh to Odysseus, and even Paul Bunyan, epitomize the spirit and values of the cultures they came from. But that only gets you so far with superheroes. What pervasive relevance does Captain America still have? Superheroes ultimately exist to sell comic books, not affirm cultural identities. So their survivability has come down to mundane marketability. Batman has gone through several facelifts over the decades, so it's hard to talk about... I keep slipping into a British thing. I don't know why. Batman has gone through several facelifts over the decades, so it's hard to talk about how he's managed to persist for so long when in fact he hasn't. Today's Batman is very different from the Batman of the 1970s, who is very different from the Batman of the 1950s. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of superheroes. I found normal human characters more interesting. In my adolescent years... Okay, forget that voice. It's too hard. In my adolescent years, I was a fan of the X-Men, but I think that was largely due to all the women in tight-fitting, scanty costumes. If I had to pick favorites, I'd say Batman, just because he's a regular dude. But when I do read comics, it tends to be sci-fi stuff or crime dramas or weird Vertigo titles like Preacher. But really, I don't read that many print comics anymore. He reads all his comics on Drunkduck, just like he should.
Yeah, of course.
Looking through my favorites list, the only superhero titles I spy are Vanguard and Curse of the Black Terror, both of which take a somewhat gritty and unconventional approach to the genre.
Oh.
You know, Batman has changed with writers.
Yeah, so he's not the same Batman. It's been a different one each time a different writer's taken over, so he's been reinvented. So it's he's saying Batman hasn't lasted. He's just regenerated himself like Doctor Who.
Right. And there's something to that. Like, he has changed over the many decades he's been around, right? But still, they could be just creating new characters. It's the character who staying popular. That's pretty amazing. And that...
Well, the name
like,
and the image of the character.
Right.
So
there's a branding thing and a familiarity.
That's it. Brand.
Yeah.
So Batman is a brand now. So people write for the brand. Yeah. Well, that's a very good point. That.
Yeah.
Right. Well, School Monkey is here with her point of view. She loves Batman.
Yes. Oh, I was going to mention she does a comic. I don't know if she's finished yet, but she does an old Batman, a sort of gag comic. Gag, G-A-G, not G-A-Y, gag comic, and very funny. You know, she's pretty funny, right? So
she's hilarious.
Yeah, Old Batman by School Monkey.
Old Batman. She says...
Check it out.
Oh, God, I wish I could do her accent. She has a really funny, weird kind of Midwestern accent, doesn't she, I think?
She does, yeah, that's right. But it's so subtle, it's hard to do. You could do it in your the voice you did for Nicia a few weeks ago. Like, made me laugh so hard.
Oh God, yeah, the female voice. Okay, I'll
it's
try.
Sort of like an infomercial or something.
I've said before now, Batman is my favorite superhero. It's been said that he doesn't have powers, but he really does, just like modern definitions of it, with money and gadgets. Really, Batman's biggest superpower is his incredible willpower and drive. That makes him very relatable. I think that part of the draw of some superheroes is that what regular people wish they could be. If you as a regular person were just a little bit more talented, a little bit more able, what would you accomplish? That's been subverted as well with superheroes like Watchmen and Powers, and how their status and responsibilities have warped them. I'm far from expert, but I think modern superheroes are much more likely to be fallible. It's more interesting and makes them easy to relate to. A good villain will always be the one that pushes the hero to work harder and better, do more. They think differently, they reevaluate themselves, and so on. That's what makes the Joker so great with the Dark Knight movie, brought out brilliantly. Superheroes who are perfect are boring, but it makes a good villain to reveal flaws. Really though, I like Batman so much because he's the most interesting psychologically. To me, of the superheroes I know, he's the most imperfect and will always be. He represents a lot of dueling ideas and dichotomies. Hellboy has quite a few as well. He has a double life, of course. He's really Batman and not Bruce. He's immensely self-punishing. He's set all these impossible goals and boundaries for himself. He's sacrificed everything to achieve what he has, and that's simultaneously admirable and tragic. Batman will never, ever have a happy ending. It's ultimately kind of depressing, a depressing thing to think about, but in a way it makes him a far more relatable than someone like Superman, because as everyone thinks, what is even the point of this? Am I even going to have a happy ending? Batman is great because you can at the same time be really impressed by him and also feel really sorry for him. Batman's better than you, but you can kind of also feel for him. As a random thought, I wonder how closely the evolution of superhero genre has related to society they're being published in. You could easily say that around World War II, when most of them came out, perhaps people wanted adventurous escapism, something more lighthearted than themes that fluctuated over the years as society and audience reflected on them. I think that the hero comics of the 90s were quite grim and dark if you use Spawn as an example. The revival of Batman and so on, maybe it's a bit less now, and so now the underlying themes and perhaps being taken more seriously. I don't know.
I love that voice.
Really hard.
That must have been hard. Yeah, it's such a long, a long essay there. Yeah.
God. Mac Attacks, my God, this one is massive. Perhaps we should read this one in normal voice.
Okay, sounds good.
You take the first part and I'll take the second part.
We'll go. Do you want to go by paragraphs or just sort of half and half?
I'll do his PS thing. You can do the enormous long one.
Oh, I see. Oh, right, he's got two. Okay. All right, from Mac Attack. It's kind of funny you ask that, School Monkey, and funnier still that it hasn't been brought up yet, because most of my studies of superheroes have been from a sociological view. When superheroes started, it was at a time when, A, there was a feeling of hopelessness because of money going dry, and because of that, crime was also pretty rampant, and B, follow-up book to Darwin's Origin of Man, or whatever it was, had led society to search for the master race. This really opened the door for the meta-humans or beyond humans. Superman was created largely as the man who could do what his creator's father couldn't. Really? His father couldn't fly? Or anyway, I won't do asides. I believe it was Jerry Siegel's, may have been Joe Shuster's father was shot in a robbery, so, oh, I see. So what better creation than a man who was bulletproof, super strong, and able to take down the bad guys? He even looked like the father. Oh, I didn't know that.
Wow.
Batman, on the other hand, oddly enough, Batman was created because Bob Kane was offered an amazing job and said, and I quote, "For that money, I'll make you a superhero by Monday." That being said, he has quickly become one of DC's most iconic characters. What makes Batman and Superman so iconic? In a way, it's strange, as Superman is incredibly difficult to write well due to his near invulnerability to almost anything except this super rare alien rock called kryptonite, which just about every thug seems to get their hands on. And Batman, when you take down the threatening demeanor and angsty childhood, why did he become iconic when Green Arrow didn't? I personally think that it's because, in an odd way, they're the source that just about every other superhero is based off of. Superman is the ever-true, good-hearted, all-American Boy Scout who is raised with those good farm boy morals that are so hard to keep in this ever-corrupt world. Batman represents the fact that you don't have to be invulnerable to save the day, you just have to have the drive to want to see justice done. I think the best explanation I've heard for comic books was this timeline. There was the origins where the first superheroes came up, and in an uncertain world people clung to these stories of hope for justice and heroes. Then came World War II, and the superheroes became even more famous, becoming the secret weapon to fight the enemy. This led to some amazing supervillains, mainly because the writers needed some sort of excuse as to why the war hadn't been won yet, despite superheroes fighting. Yes. I lost my place. Okay, here we go. Then the war ended. It just seemed to be a hard act to follow up. On top of that, there began being complaints and studies about how comic books were causing violent deaths, much like the complaints on video games now. Censorship was forced on comics, and the nations were in an uproar, and these led to some of the strangest kinds of comics you'll ever see, simply as, well, they weren't allowed to do anything else. Censorship was finally abandoned, and we kind of went the polar opposite direction in reaction to the newfound freedom, creating a plethora of anti-heroes and making our current heroes a lot darker. I'm not certain how true this is through the timeline. I'm not sure how true this is, though the timeline matches up, but I'm told that a big turning point was a 4-issue comic by DC Comics called Kingdom Come. We talked about that before. Which basically foresaw a future if we kept going the way we were headed with dark heroes. Now I find we're heading to, but not quite yet at, a new kind of hybrid between the original heroes and the dark heroes. No, we don't see criminals cut in half or anything as much anymore. It's a shame, isn't it? We don't see criminals cut in half or anything as much anymore, but at the same time, we've also lost much of that he's the hero, he's the villain attitude. Now there's a lot of added focus on why is he doing this, and is he really evil or is he just a victim of circumstance? I find that superheroes on Drunkduck really support this new kind of hero too. Abbott Nihil's Bombshell is all about trying to find the source of the problem versus just taking out the first villains you see. Nepoth's Energize and Fearless have a great view on the hero's sorrows. Even my own Wireless comic is in large portion a social experiment as to what would happen if Canada, after being without superheroes since World War II, despite every other country embracing the superhero future, gained its own superhero, as well as the power of the media over personal opinions and panic. Loads of great examples on here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, he covered a lot of stuff. And going back into all the stuff about Kingdom Come and Batman and Superman, they are the two main superhero icons in Western comics.
Yeah.
And
That's
no one
true.
else can really bump them, not even Wonder Woman, who tries to get in there as a third wheel. No one's going to come between that sacred love between Batman and Superman.
That's right. That's right. I mean, whatever it is, it always kind of comes down to those two. At least in DC Comics, they're DC characters.
Okay.
Marvel has more, like Spider-Man and everyone is Marvel Comics, but yeah, like it's always Superman and Batman. For some reason, they're very strong.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Superman is the strongest of them all.
Yes, very true.
Right. Now, for Mac Attack's PS, favorite superhero. Despite me not paying much attention to him for the last numerous years, still has to be Superman.
Editor's note, he actually said Spider-Man.
Still has to be Superman.
Spider-Man!
I know he's gone downhill in movies and really a lot more complex than he used to be, but I'll always have a soft spot for him, as I can relate to well. Supervillain theory. I'd say more than supervillains that nemesis, I think it's nemesis, are more important to the superhero story. Just because they show that it isn't always easy to be a hero. On top of that, it really builds on the superhero character, as they're usually the one person or thing who can bring the superhero to their breaking point and make them ask the tough questions in life. Why is Lex Luthor good for Superman? Because they're about as opposite as you can get. Lex is as vulnerable, corrupt, and greedy as Superman is invulnerable, honest, and generous. And also, Lex Luthor is bald and Superman isn't, so there you are. Batman and the Joker. The Joker is as chaotic, impulsive, and sadistic as Batman is. Strategic, pensive, and refusing to kill. Minus that one picture, apparently. I'm not sure what that is.
Well, there was a pic. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There was a picture in the thread of Batman with a gun. Like the initial Batman had a gun.
Yes, shooting dead his adversary, and he says you can find these connections with most of the hero nemesis relationships, and it's just the most epic part of the genre. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if we talked enough about the villain having a nemesis, having that opposite out there. Even though you were saying before, like a superhero fighting regular burglars and thugs and criminals kind of gets pretty boring pretty quickly. So to have that sort of other out there, someone who sort of brings out the most equal and opposite, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's important. And for a hero's life to be hard. Those are good points, too, that everybody made. Like a hero, it should be hard to be a hero. And that's probably where a lot of superhero movies fail, I think. Because once, our sequels, rather, once the powers are established and the hero is comfortable, it's more difficult to make the hero's life harder and to make him kind of vulnerable, him or her vulnerable and stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah, once you're introduced to the character, then you have to go into the episodic stuff, and it can be tricky. It's hard to continue on. I think they did that well with the early Batman films, with the Tim Burton ones, the one with the penguin and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't a bad sequel.
Not at all. Not at all.
Bit weird.
Spider-Man 2 was fantastic. Probably better than Spider-Man 1, maybe.
All right, then. Great. So those were our late additions from these tardy people.
And after this, we'll click back to our ongoing discussion that we're almost finished with on the pre-recorded portion.
Shh, beep.
We now return to your regular scheduled program.
All right, popular Drunkduck heroes or webcomic heroes in general. Now, I know there is Valkyrie Yuki, who is very popular, Energize on Drunkduck, Shell, Dacian by Mr. Neil, Bombshell by Abbott Nihil, who is that's one of our featured comics from last week.
Yep.
Or the week before. The week before. The week before. Oh, God, I don't know.
Well, you had double features like a couple weeks ago, right? You had a double.
Yeah. Pinky TA, she's not a real superhero, but I'll just mention her because I'm a wanker and I like to keep on promoting myself. Now, Magellan, who Abbott Nihil mentioned, that's a great one. Do you know any?
Well, I don't read a whole lot of superhero stuff, although I do like some. I've just discovered the Red Devil recently on Drunkduck, and the story is kind of just taking shape, but pretty exciting. And she's a female superhero.
Okay.
It's sort of an old. It's kind of a period piece. I can't remember offhand exactly when it takes place, but I think it's back. It's back a ways, but that's really good so far. It's kind of just getting started, but it's pretty cool.
That sounds like an interesting one. There's also Hellraiser, which was a featured comic last week, and one by Nolly Dreves. God, I can't remember her famous superhero that she created. Something about a ballet dancer who turned into a superhero. Oh, well, whatever.
Well, what about the one where the girl's a mechanic and she's developed sort of electronic powers or energy powers? You just featured it in the past few weeks. That's really good. Was it Vora?
Princess Vora, yeah.
Yeah.
Princess
That's shaping up pretty interestingly. Yeah.
Why do people love superheroes? That's really key. Why superheroes are popular with people? Because they are the ultimate protagonist. They're just not a normal protagonist. They've got superpowers that makes them even better than a normal protagonist. So they are a good, interesting character that we live through characters in stories. That's the thing. That's why characters are often interesting, because they're us in a story, but they're us with these amazing powers, and we put ourselves into these protagonist characters, and it's really great if they have all these super abilities to do stuff. It makes them even more interesting and more fun because they are ourselves. They are our little avatar in a story. What about fulfilling needs? You wrote something about that for the masses. No, I think I think we've.
I see what you're talking about there. Okay, sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was trying to do a sneaky, funny segue into what you've written. So, but you're right. We have sort of covered this before, but you did write something interesting here. You said, I would say that it's first related to our reptilian brain instinct.
Yeah.
So this goes down to why we want to be that kind of why we want to be that protagonist, why we want those powers, because it's a desire for freedom, territory, and power. They are by and large male instincts, and this Breaking Bad thing.
Okay, now I mentioned Breaking Bad because that's an amazing show, and I saw you mention it somewhere. I read something you'd written about watching it. Are you liking it?
I love it. It's a fantastic show.
So this is a guy, very repressed, depressed kind of guy, and a chemistry teacher, sort of a beaten down kind of character who decides to become a drug manufacturer. So he enters this world of crime. But what's really going on is there's sort of repressed animal instincts to be a powerful guy and to, exert that power and create freedom for himself and territory for himself, and flex his animal muscles, if you will. But he's not a superhero. Let's say that, because the choices he makes, he's going about it in a very destructive kind of way, and the decisions he's making are not good ones. Although he is getting that feeling of power, of being, becoming a powerful person. He's going more the dark way, and I'm pretty sure not going to end well for him.
Functionally, he's actually a super villain, really,
right,
in a lot of ways. But you're right. The whole theme of it is the whole reason why we like superheroes. He typifies the whole thing. So I think that is the perfect way to end this brilliant whole treatise.
You're just dying to get off this call, aren't you?
I think that's brilliant. He typifies it perfectly. What makes superheroes superheroes? Why we like superheroes?
Added to that, let's just say briefly that added to that is what Abbott and Hill said last week, I believe, and Crowitz also said about the moral, making good choices and having good character. That's sort of the other half when it's an actual superhero.
Yeah, being good and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
There you go.
But having the power to make those good choices. I mean, the guy in Breaking Bad, Walter, Dr. Mr. White, Heisenberg.
Yeah, Heisenberg.
The whole reason he gets into that is because he wants that power. He wants to be able to do good for himself and to provide for his family. He turns evil in the end, but
that's true. Yeah,
the whole reason was because he wanted to be able to be good in his own way. All right, I think it was brilliant. Thank you very much.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you for being a fantastic guest and for giving us 2 excellent Quackcasts.
All right, excellent might be strong, but, we're just common people. We're not superheroes.
Speak for yourself, sidekick.
Except for, Ozone stands apart. He is a superhero. I'm just one of you. I'm one of y'all. I'm just one of y'all.
Yeah, and I don't put my pants on one leg at a time. I put my pants on both legs at the same time because I can fly.